The first interspecies student exchange program in galactic history was about to begin. The Galactic Academic Consortium had spent 3 standard cycles planning this momentous event. 6 young beings from across the galaxy would travel to the infamous Deathworld known as Earth to study alongside the mysterious humans. Professor Veltar of the Zephyrian Academy floated nervously above her crystal podium. Her translucent, crystalline form caught the gentle, artificial light of the lecture hall. Around her, 6 students from different worlds sat in specially designed chairs that matched their unique physiologies. "Students," Professor Veltar began, her voice creating soft chimes as it resonated through her crystal body. "You are about to embark on the most dangerous academic mission ever attempted. Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world, the highest possible rating." Zektar, a young Zephyrian student, shifted his delicate crystal limbs. His species had evolved in low-gravity caves where the slightest vibration could cause deadly rockfalls. The idea of studying on a world with unpredictable geology seemed impossible. Next to him sat Aqualin, a Neptarian whose blue, translucent skin glistened with moisture. Her people lived in perfectly stable ocean worlds where the temperature never changed, and storms were unknown. She breathed through gills that required constant humidity, and the thought of Earth's chaotic weather patterns made her nervous. The insectoid Chitech student, designated Night 7, clicked his mandibles anxiously. His hive world operated on perfect efficiency and order. Every action was planned centuries in advance. The reports of human spontaneity and chaos were deeply disturbing to his species' mindset. Glowing softly in a specialized containment field, Luxara the Luxite pulsed with worried energy patterns. Her people existed as pure thought and plasma, inhabiting the calm electromagnetic fields of their homeworld's ionosphere. The violent electrical storms and magnetic fluctuations of Earth seemed like torture. The plant-like Verdun student Root Whisper swayed gently in her nutrient pod. Her people were peaceful gardeners who lived in harmony with all growing things. The reports that humans actually consumed plant matter as food had already caused several of her kind to faint in horror. Finally, there was Mistwalker, a Velan, whose gaseous form shifted between containers. His people lived in stable cloud cities where the atmospheric pressure never changed. Earth's violent weather systems and pressure variations could literally tear him apart. Professor Veltar continued her briefing. Earth's dangers are well documented. The planet experiences regular seismic activity, extreme weather variations, atmospheric toxicity, and biological warfare between organisms. However, the human universities have assured us that with proper protective equipment and constant supervision, you will be safe in controlled academic environments. She activated a holographic display showing Earth. The blue and green world looked deceptively peaceful from space. The humans have evolved on this world for millions of cycles, she explained. They have developed remarkable adaptation abilities. Your mission is to study their academic systems while documenting their survival methods. This research could revolutionize our understanding of Deathworld species. The students looked at each other nervously. Each had been selected as the best and brightest of their species, but nothing in their education had prepared them for actual danger. "Professor," Ein 7 clicked, "the reports say humans regularly expose themselves to disease organisms. How is this possible without immediate death?" "That is exactly what you will study," Professor Veltar replied. "Humans appear to have developed immunity through controlled exposure to pathogens. It defies all known medical science." Aqualin raised a tentacle-like appendage. "The atmospheric reports show oxygen levels that would be toxic to most species. How do humans survive breathing poison? Another mystery for you to investigate. Their entire physiology seems designed around surviving impossible conditions." Luxara's energy patterns fluctuated with concern. The electromagnetic readings from their cities show massive interference patterns. How do they maintain consciousness in such chaotic fields? "These are the questions that make this mission so important," the professor explained. "If we can understand how humans survive on Earth, we might learn new methods for our own species to explore dangerous worlds." The students spent the next several hours reviewing safety protocols. They would wear full environmental suits at all times. Human supervisors would monitor them constantly. They would stay within designated safe zones inside the university buildings. Emergency evacuation ships would remain on standby. As they prepared to board the transport vessel, Each student carried specialized survival equipment designed for their species. Zektar had vibration dampeners to protect his crystal structure. Aqualin carried humidity generators and water reserves. I-7 brought communication devices to maintain contact with his hive. Luxara had electromagnetic shields to protect her energy form. Root Whisper traveled in a sealed botanical chamber. Mistwalker remained in a pressurized containment unit. The journey to Earth took several standard cycles. During the trip, they studied human academic papers and tried to understand human culture. The more they learned, the more confused they became. Humans seemed to deliberately expose themselves to danger for recreation. They climbed mountains, dove into deep water, and ran long distances until their bodies were exhausted. They consumed foods that would be toxic to most species. They lived in close contact with millions of microorganisms that would overwhelm any normal immune system. Most disturbing of all, humans seemed to thrive in this environment. Their academic achievements, artistic creations, and technological innovations suggested a species that not only survived on their Deathworld, but had used its challenges to become stronger. As their ship approached Earth, the students got their first real look at the planet that had produced such impossible beings. Massive storm systems swirled across the surface. Lightning flashed through the clouds. The very atmosphere seemed to writhe with violent energy. "How does anything live down there?" whispered Aqualin. "We're about to find out," Zektar replied, his crystal form trembling slightly. The ship landed at a human spaceport, and the students were quickly transferred to a specialized transport vehicle. Through the reinforced windows, they caught glimpses of the alien landscape. Massive trees swayed in winds that would be hurricanes on their homeworlds. The ground itself seemed rough and uneven, nothing like the carefully maintained surfaces of their planets. But most shocking of all were the humans themselves. They walked around in this hostile environment wearing only thin fabric coverings. No protective suits, no environmental controls, no safety equipment at all. They simply existed in conditions that would kill any of the students within minutes. Cambridge University loomed ahead of them, an ancient institution that had somehow survived for centuries on this chaotic world. As their transport approached the designated safe building, the students realized they were about to discover secrets that might change their understanding of life itself. Dr. Sarah Chen, their human supervisor, was waiting for them in the environmentally controlled reception area. She was smaller than they had expected, but there was something in her calm demeanor that suggested incredible strength. She had lived her entire life on this death world, and it had shaped her into something their species could barely comprehend. "Welcome to Earth," she said with a smile that showed her teeth, a display that several species interpreted as a threat response. "I hope you're ready to learn why we call this place home." The alien students looked at each other through their protective equipment. None of them felt ready for what they were about to discover. They had come here thinking they would study human academics. Instead, they were about to learn why the galaxy's most dangerous world had produced its most terrifying species. The first week at Cambridge University passed in a blur of horror and fascination for the alien students. Dr. Sarah Chen had arranged for them to stay in a specially modified dormitory building with environmental controls for each species. But even within these safe spaces, they began to encounter the terrifying reality of human existence. Zektar was the first to notice something disturbing about human food consumption. During their orientation meeting in the cafeteria, he watched through his protective visor as students lined up to collect their meals. What he saw defied all logic. "They're eating plants," he whispered to Root Whisper through the communication system. "Living plant matter." Root Whisper's entire form shuddered in her botanical chamber. "That cannot be correct. No sentient species would consume other living beings." But there was no denying what they witnessed. Humans calmly filled their plates with what their databases identified as plant tissues: leaves, roots, fruits, and seeds. Even worse, they seemed to enjoy it. "Look at that one," I-7 clicked nervously, pointing at a human student who was biting into what appeared to be a living plant reproductive organ. The human called it an apple and ate it with obvious pleasure. Aqualin was equally horrified when she realized what the red substance on many plates actually was. "Is that muscle tissue?" she gurgled through her aquatic breathing apparatus. Dr. Chen noticed their distress and approached their table. "Is everything all right? You seem concerned about the food." "Dr. Chen," Luxara pulsed weakly, Our databases indicate that humans consume both plant and animal tissue. Surely this information is incorrect? Dr. Chen smiled that terrifying display of teeth again. Oh no, that's accurate. Humans are omnivores. We eat both plants and animals. It's perfectly normal for us. The alien students exchanged horrified glances. Root Whisper actually fainted in her chamber, her photosynthetic cells going dark with shock. But how do you process such toxic materials? Mistwalker asked from his containment unit. Our analysis shows that raw plant matter contains defensive compounds that should be lethal. We cook most of our food, Dr. Chen explained casually. Heat breaks down the toxins and makes nutrients more available. We've been doing it for hundreds of thousands of years. She gestured to a student at a nearby table, who was consuming what appeared to be burned plant matter covered in the secretions of some unknown creature. Pizza is actually one of our most popular foods. Bread made from ground grain, dairy products from animals, and various plant and meat toppings. I-7's mandibles clicked rapidly in distress. You consume the reproductive fluids of other species? Cheese, you mean? Sure, cow's milk processed and aged. Quite delicious. The students spent the rest of the meal in stunned silence, watching humans casually consume substances that would require hazmat protocols on their homeworlds. But the food was only the beginning of their education in human impossibility. The next shock came during their first campus tour. Dr. Chen had assured them it was perfectly safe. They would stay on paved walkways and remain within the university boundaries. What she hadn't mentioned was that humans considered exposure to the open atmosphere to be normal. As they exited the protected building, the alien students were immediately assaulted by the chaos of Earth's environment. The atmospheric pressure fluctuated with something called wind. Electromagnetic radiation from the local star bombarded everything without any protective shielding. Microscopic organisms and particles floated freely in the air. How are you not dying? Sektar asked Dr. Chen, watching her walk calmly through conditions that would shatter his crystal structure in minutes. Dying from what? She replied, genuinely confused. The atmospheric chaos, the radiation exposure, the biological contamination. Dr. Chen laughed, a sound that made several students recoil in their protective gear. This is just a nice day. Clear skies, gentle breeze, about 20 degrees Celsius. Perfect weather for a walk. She pointed to some human students who were engaged in an activity their database identified as frisbee. They were running at high speeds, leaping into the air and deliberately colliding with each other to catch a flying disc. What are they doing? Aqualin asked in horror. Playing frisbee. It's a recreational activity. They're voluntarily subjecting themselves to physical trauma, 9-7 observed, for pleasure. Exercise is important for human health, Dr. Chen explained. We need regular physical activity to maintain our bodies. The students watched in amazement as humans deliberately stressed their cardiovascular systems, strained their muscles, and exposed themselves to potential injury, all while laughing and enjoying themselves. But the worst revelation came during their first biology class. Professor James Morrison, a cheerful human with graying hair, was explaining the basics of human physiology to help the alien students understand their hosts. The human immune system, he began, is essentially a biological warfare unit. We are constantly under attack by viruses, bacteria, fungi, and parasites. Our bodies fight off these invaders 24 hours a day. Luxara's energy patterns fluctuated wildly. You live in constant biological warfare. In a sense, yes, but it's not as dramatic as it sounds. Most of the time, our immune systems handle threats automatically. We don't even notice. Root Whisper had recovered enough to participate in the discussion. But how do you survive such constant assault? Professor Morrison smiled. Exposure. The more pathogens we encounter, the stronger our immune systems become. Children are especially good at this. They catch diseases, recover, and build immunity. You deliberately expose your young to diseases. 9-7 clicked in shock. Not deliberately exactly, but exposure is inevitable and beneficial. A child who grows up in a sterile environment actually has a weaker immune system than one exposed to normal environmental microbes. The professor brought up a holographic display of human blood cells under attack by various pathogens. Watch this. Here we see white blood cells engaging hostile bacteria. The alien students watched in fascination and horror as the microscopic battlefield played out. Human immune cells literally consumed invading organisms, tore them apart, and recycled their components. Your blood cells are predators, Mistwalker observed. In a way, yes. Evolution has turned our immune system into an incredibly efficient military force. We can adapt to new threats, remember old ones, and even share immunity through vaccination. Aqualin raised a tentacle. What is vaccination? We deliberately introduce weakened or dead pathogens into our bodies to train our immune systems to fight them. It's preventive biological warfare. The silence that followed this explanation was profound. These students came from worlds where sterility was maintained through advanced technology. The idea of deliberately introducing disease organisms was beyond their comprehension. Professor, Zektar finally asked, how many different organisms are attacking you right now? Professor Morrison chuckled. Millions. My skin is covered with bacteria. My digestive system contains trillions of microorganisms, and I'm breathing in various pathogens with every breath. But my immune system keeps everything in balance. Are you not afraid? Root Whisper whispered. Afraid of what? This is normal. This is how life works on Earth. We don't live in spite of the dangers, we live because of them. Every challenge our planet throws at us makes us stronger. As the class ended, the alien students sat in stunned silence. They had thought they were coming to study human education. Instead, they were learning that humans were essentially walking biological weapon systems, forged by millions of years of surviving on a world that seemed designed to kill everything on it. That evening, in the safety of their environmental chambers, the students held their first group discussion about what they had learned. They eat toxins for pleasure, Root Whisper said faintly. They exercise until their bodies are damaged, added Aqualin. They live in permanent biological warfare. I-27 clicked, and they call it normal. Luxara pulsed. Zektar's crystal form resonated with a low, worried tone. What kind of species thrives in conditions that would exterminate any rational civilization? Mistwalker shifted in his containment unit. I'm beginning to think we haven't come here to study education at all. We're here to document the galaxy's most successful survival species. None of them realized how prophetic those words would prove to be. The earthquake hit on a Tuesday morning during what humans called a perfectly normal day. The alien students were attending a literature class, trying to understand human storytelling, when the ground began to move. For species that had evolved on geologically stable worlds, the concept of the planet itself attacking was beyond comprehension. When the first tremor shook the building, the alien students immediately assumed they were under assault by some unknown weapon. Zekatar's crystal structure began resonating in harmony with the building's vibrations, creating a high-pitched whine that hurt even human ears. His species had evolved in caves where the slightest vibration meant deadly rockfalls. Every instinct in his crystalline body screamed that death was imminent. The planet is trying to kill us, he transmitted frantically to the others. Aqualin's breathing apparatus began cycling rapidly as she hyperventilated in terror. On her stable ocean world, the seafloor never moved. The concept of solid ground behaving like liquid was impossible to process. I-7's compound eyes darted in all directions as he searched for the source of the attack. His hive mind conditioning made him look for enemies to fight, but how do you battle an entire planet? In her containment unit, Mistwalker was experiencing something close to system failure. The pressure waves from the earthquake were tearing at his gaseous form, threatening to scatter his consciousness across the room. Root Whisper had immediately tried to root herself to the floor for stability, but her botanical chamber was sliding across the room. Her photosynthetic cells were flashing in distress patterns that hurt to look at. Luxara's energy form was fluctuating wildly as the building's electrical systems sparked and shifted around her. The electromagnetic chaos was like being caught in a plasma storm, but the humans in the room barely seemed concerned. Professor Elena Vasquez, who had been discussing the themes in human war literature, calmly said, "Everyone, please move away from the windows and get under your desks. This appears to be an earthquake." The human students responded with practiced efficiency. They dropped to their knees, crawled under their desks, and covered their heads with their hands. No panic, no screaming, just calm compliance with what was obviously a well-rehearsed procedure. "How are you not terrified?" Zektar transmitted as his crystal form continued to resonate dangerously. "It's just an earthquake," replied Marcus, a human student who had helped them understand campus navigation. "Probably a magnitude 5 or so. Nothing too serious." "Nothing serious?" HFY clicked in disbelief. The ground is moving! Yeah, that's what earthquakes do, Marcus said, still crouched under his desk. The tectonic plates shift and release pressure. It happens all the time. The alien students could not comprehend this casual attitude toward planetary violence. On their worlds, such geological instability would be classified as an extinction-level event requiring immediate evacuation of the entire planet. The shaking lasted for 43 seconds. To the alien students, it felt like an eternity of terror. To the humans, it was a minor inconvenience that interrupted their lesson. When the tremors stopped, Professor Vasquez stood up and brushed dust off her clothes. Well, that was exciting. Everyone all right? The human students emerged from under their desks, chatting casually about the quake's intensity and comparing it to previous earthquakes they had experienced. Several were actually smiling. Previous earthquakes? Aquilin gurgled in horror. This has happened before? Oh, sure, said a human student named Jennifer. I've been through dozens of them. You get used to it. This was actually pretty mild. Dr. Sarah Chen burst into the room, followed by university emergency response personnel. But instead of the panic and evacuation procedures the alien students expected, the humans began a calm, methodical assessment of the situation. Any injuries? Dr. Chen asked. No injuries here, Professor Vasquez reported, though our exchange students are understandably distressed. Dr. Chen turned to the alien students, who were all transmitting distress signals at maximum intensity. Are your environmental systems intact? Through their terror, the students managed to confirm that their protective equipment was functioning, but they couldn't understand why the humans weren't evacuating immediately. We need to leave this planet, Zektar resonated frantically. The ground is unstable. The entire world could collapse at any moment. Actually, earthquakes usually release pressure, Dr. Chen explained calmly. This makes another quake less likely in the immediate area. We're probably safer now than we were this morning. The logic was incomprehensible to beings from stable worlds. How could planetary violence make things safer? But what happened next challenged every assumption they had about survival instincts and rational behavior. Instead of fleeing from danger, the humans began moving toward it. Emergency response teams were rushing into the building to check for structural damage. Maintenance workers were heading toward the areas most likely to be affected. Medical personnel were moving through the halls looking for anyone who might need help. They're running toward the danger. HFY clicked in amazement. Marcus overheard him. Well, yeah. People might be hurt. We need to help them. But you could be hurt too, Miss Walker observed from his containment unit. That's a risk we take, Marcus replied simply. You can't just leave people in trouble. The alien students watched in fascination as humans throughout the building demonstrated behavior that violated every known principle of survival. Instead of protecting themselves first, they were checking on others. Instead of fleeing to safety, they were ensuring everyone else was safe. Dr. Chen was coordinating with emergency services, but she refused to leave the building until all her students, including the alien visitors, were accounted for and safe. Dr. Chen, Luxara pulsed weakly. Why don't you save yourself first? Because that's not how it works, she replied. I'm responsible for all of you. I don't leave until everyone is safe. Professor Vasquez was helping move equipment away from cracked walls, despite the possibility of aftershocks. When Root Whisper asked her why she was risking further danger, she looked genuinely confused by the question. This stuff needs to be moved before it falls on someone, she explained. It's just common sense, common sense. The humans called their willingness to risk personal safety for others common sense. Over the next few hours, the alien students observed a response pattern that would have been impossible on their homeworlds. Humans worked together to assess damage, help the injured, and restore normal operations. No one was forced to help. They simply did it automatically. When a water pipe burst in the basement, human maintenance workers went down to fix it, even though aftershocks could cause more damage. When an elderly professor was trapped in an elevator, students volunteered to help get her out. When the power failed in one section of the building, humans shared flashlights and portable chargers without being asked. It's like they're all part of the same hive, HFY observed, but they choose to cooperate instead of being compelled. The most shocking moment came when Marcus gave his emergency heating unit to Zektar, whose crystal structure was in danger of fracturing in the cooler temperature caused by the building's damaged heating system. But you need that device, Zektar protested. Humans require thermal regulation too, Marcus shrugged. I've got a jacket. You'll die without heat regulation. It's not a hard choice. The casual way Marcus risked his own comfort and potentially his health to save an alien he barely knew exemplified something the students were beginning to recognize as fundamentally human. As evening approached and the building was declared structurally sound, the humans began returning to normal activities. Classes resumed, students went to dinner, and life continued as if the planet hadn't just tried to kill everyone a few hours earlier. How do you just go on? Aquilin asked Dr. Chen during their evening debriefing. What else would we do? Dr. Chen replied. Earthquakes happen. We deal with them and move forward. Life's too short to spend it being afraid of things you can't control. That night, the alien students held an emergency conference in their quarters. Each species had protocols for planetary evacuation in case of geological instability. But the humans had protocols for just continuing to live. They don't run from danger, Zektar observed. They run toward it to help others. They prioritize group survival over individual safety, 9-7 added. But not through genetic compulsion, through choice. They're not just adapted to survive their death world, Luxara pulsed slowly. They're adapted to help others survive it too. Mistwalker shifted thoughtfully in his containment unit. I'm beginning to think we're not studying how they survive Earth, we're studying how Earth created the most dangerous cooperative species in the galaxy. Root, whispers photosynthetic cells pulsed weakly. What happens when beings this resilient and this willing to help each other decide to leave their death world? The question hung in the air like a prophecy. None of them realized that their observations were already being transmitted back to the Galactic Academic Consortium, where analysts were beginning to reach the same terrifying conclusion. Humans weren't just survivors of a death world. They were a death world species that had learned to weaponize cooperation, and they were starting to spread across the galaxy. The winter storm that hit Cambridge in their third week was described by local weather services as unusual but not unprecedented. For the alien students, it was nothing short of an apocalyptic demonstration of why Earth deserved its death world classification. The morning started normally enough. The students were becoming accustomed to human routines, though they still found most human behavior disturbing. But when they looked outside their protected dormitory windows, they saw something that challenged their understanding of how planets could function. Frozen water was falling from the sky. That cannot be correct, Anyang 7 clicked. His compound eyes focused on the swirling white particles outside. Water cannot exist in solid form in an atmosphere and still be falling. Dr. Chen, who was checking on their environmental systems, smiled at their confusion. That's snow. Frozen precipitation. It's quite common in winter. You mean this happens regularly? Zektar asked, his crystal structure resonating with anxiety as he watched the white substance accumulate on the ground. Every year, sometimes multiple times per winter. Aquilin's gills fluttered in distress, but the temperature readings show levels that would cause immediate system failure in most organic compounds. How does anything survive? Humans are adapted for a wide range of temperatures, Dr. Chen explained. We can function in conditions from about -40 to +50 degrees Celsius. The alien student stared at her in shock. Most galactic species required environmental controls to survive temperature variations of more than 5 degrees. Dr. Chen, Luxara pulsed weakly. Our instruments are detecting electromagnetic anomalies associated with this weather pattern. Probably lightning in the snow clouds. Thunder snow is rare but not unheard of. Root Whisper's photosynthetic cells had gone almost completely dark. You have electrical storms during temperature extremes? Weather on Earth is pretty dynamic. Sometimes several dangerous conditions happen at once. As if summoned by her words, the lights in the building flickered and went out. Emergency lighting kicked in immediately, but the alien students' environmental systems began switching to backup power. In the red glow of the emergency lights, they watched through the windows as the storm intensified. This is a cascade failure, Mistwalker observed from his containment unit. Multiple environmental systems are collapsing simultaneously, but the humans didn't seem to consider it a crisis. Dr. Chen was calmly checking her communication device and coordinating with building maintenance. The Main power grid is down, she announced. Probably a transformer hit by lightning or damaged by ice accumulation. Backup generators will keep essential systems running, but we'll need to conserve power. How long until evacuation? Zektar asked, assuming that losing primary power during an environmental crisis would trigger immediate emergency protocols. Evacuation? This is just a winter storm. The power will be restored in a few hours or maybe by tomorrow. The casual way she dismissed what the alien students considered a planetary emergency was becoming a pattern, but what they witnessed over the next several hours redefined their understanding of what constituted impossible survival capabilities. When the backup generators failed an hour later, the building's temperature began dropping rapidly. The alien students' environmental suits were designed for short-term protection, not extended exposure to extreme conditions. Their life support systems were draining power at an alarming rate. Dr. Chen gathered the human students in the common area and began organizing what she called emergency procedures. But, instead of panic or despair, the humans responded with calm efficiency that bordered on the supernatural. Marcus and several other students ventured outside into the storm. Outside, into conditions that would kill most galactic species in minutes, to gather firewood from a storage area behind the building. They're going into the environmental chaos voluntarily. I-7 clicked in amazement. Someone needs to get fuel for the fireplace, Marcus explained when he returned, covered in frozen water crystals but apparently unharmed. The common room fireplace can heat this whole area. The alien students watched in fascination as humans built a fire using primitive combustion techniques. No technology, no environmental controls, just fuel and flame. You're creating uncontrolled chemical reactions indoors, Mistwalker observed nervously. It's called a campfire, said Jennifer, one of the human students. Humans have been using fire for hundreds of thousands of years. In enclosed spaces? Sure, fire was probably humanity's first technology. As the fire began warming the room, the alien students noticed something remarkable happening to the humans around them. Instead of hoarding resources for individual survival, they were sharing everything. Students brought blankets from their rooms and distributed them to anyone who was cold. Someone produced a cache of food and began preparing hot drinks for everyone. Others organized sleeping arrangements so that body heat could be shared efficiently. This is unprecedented cooperation, 9 and 7 observed. There's no hierarchical command structure, no enforcement mechanism, but they're working together perfectly. Dr. Chen overheard him. It's just common sense. We're all in this together. That phrase again. Common sense. The humans treated their most remarkable survival behaviors as if they were obvious and natural, but the most shocking demonstration was yet to come. Around midnight, they heard shouting from outside. Through the storm, human voices were calling for help. Someone was in trouble. Without hesitation, Marcus and 3 other students began putting on additional clothing layers. They were preparing to go back outside into the deadly storm toward danger. Someone's car went off the road, Marcus explained. We need to help them. But you could die, Zektar protested. The environmental conditions are lethal. Maybe, but someone definitely will die if we don't help them. The alien students watched through the windows as the humans disappeared into the storm. They were voluntarily entering conditions that would kill them, to save strangers they had never met. This behavior makes no evolutionary sense, 9-7 clicked. They're risking their own survival for beings outside their genetic group. Dr. Chen was monitoring radio communications with emergency services. The roads are impassable. Emergency vehicles can't get through. If anyone's going to help those people, it has to be us. 20 minutes later, the humans returned. They were carrying an unconscious man and supporting a woman who was barely able to walk. Both victims were suffering from what humans called
hypothermia, a condition
caused by core body temperature dropping too low. The alien students watched in amazement as the humans immediately began treatment procedures. They moved the victims close to the fire, removed their wet clothing and wrapped them in dry blankets. Someone heated water to give them warm drinks. Others monitored their vital signs. How do you know these medical procedures? Aquilin asked. Basic first aid, Jennifer replied. Everyone learns it in school. You teach all humans how to treat environmental trauma? Sure. You never know when you might need to help someone. As the night continued, the alien students witnessed behavior that defied every known model of species survival. The humans took turns staying awake to maintain the fire. They shared their food with the rescued strangers. They gave up their own comfort to ensure everyone survived. When Zektar's heating unit finally failed, threatening his crystal structure with thermal fracture, Marcus immediately gave him his own jacket and moved closer to the fire, despite the obvious discomfort this caused him. "Why are you doing this?" Zektar asked. "Because you need it more than I do," Marcus replied simply. "But you barely know me. I'm not even your species." Marcus looked confused by the question. "So, you're still a person. People help people. That's just how it works." By morning, the storm had passed and power was restored. The rescued humans were taken to a medical facility for treatment. The building returned to normal operations. Once again, life continued as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But the alien students now understood something fundamental about humanity that no academic paper could have taught them. They don't just survive their death world, Luxara pulsed weekly during their morning debriefing. They use their death world to become something we've never encountered before. "What do you mean?" Root Whisper asked. "They're persistence predators who hunt danger to protect others. They're pack hunters who have weaponized cooperation. They're survival specialists who consider self-sacrifice to be normal behavior." Eind Seven's mandibles clicked nervously. Every challenge their planet presents, they turn into a strength. The diseases make their immune system stronger. The danger makes them braver. The disasters make them more cooperative. Mistwalker shifted in his containment unit. "I'm beginning to think Earth isn't just a death world. It's a training ground. And humans are what you get when a species graduates from the most advanced survival course in the galaxy." Zektar's crystal structure resonated with a low, worried harmonic. What happens when a species like that decides to explore the rest of the galaxy? None of them wanted to answer that question. But they were starting to understand why the Galactic Academic Consortium had really sent them to Earth. This wasn't just an exchange program. It was a reconnaissance mission. And what they were discovering was far more terrifying than anyone had imagined. The final month of the exchange program brought revelations that would forever change how the galaxy understood humanity. The alien students had survived earthquakes, storms, and the daily horror of human existence on Earth. But it was their academic research project that unveiled the true terrifying nature of their hosts. Dr. Chen had assigned them a simple task: document the differences between human education and their homeworld systems. What began as a comparative study became an investigation into the most successful survival species in galactic history. Zektar was analyzing human physical education requirements when he made the first breakthrough. His crystal structure resonated with excitement as he shared his findings with the others. "Humans are required to deliberately stress their bodies as part of their education," he transmitted. "They call it physical education, but it's actually controlled damage protocols." "What do you mean?" 47 asked, looking up from his own research into human social structures. "Watch this." Zektar activated a holographic display showing human students in what they called a gymnasium. They repeatedly lift heavy objects until their muscle fibers tear. Then they rest while their bodies repair the damage, making the muscles stronger than before. The alien students watched in fascination as humans deliberately destroyed and rebuilt their own bodies through a process called exercise. It's a systematic self-improvement through controlled trauma, Aquilin observed from her analysis of human swimming techniques. They simulate drowning to become better swimmers. They practice fighting to become better fighters. They expose themselves to failure to become more resilient. Root Whisper had been studying human agriculture and made an equally disturbing discovery. Their food production systems are based on biological warfare. They deliberately introduce beneficial organisms to fight harmful ones. They use the concept of competition between species as a tool. "That's not the worst part," Luxara pulsed from her research station. "I've been analyzing their academic literature. Humans study disaster scenarios, military conflicts, and survival situations not just as history, but as preparation." She displayed examples of human curricula: emergency response training, conflict resolution, crisis management, leadership under pressure. "They train their young to handle disasters that haven't happened yet," she continued. "They prepare for problems they might never face. They systematically educate their population to survive anything." Eind-7 had been studying human social organization, and his findings were perhaps the most unsettling. Human social structures are designed around what they call redundancy. If any individual fails, others automatically take their place. If any system breaks down, backup systems activate. Their entire civilization is built like a military operation. Mistwalker had been analyzing human communication patterns and added his own terrifying observations. They share information about dangers and solutions across their entire species. When one human learns something that aids survival, all humans eventually learn it. They have weaponized collective intelligence. As the alien students compiled their research, a picture emerged that none of them had expected when they first arrived on Earth. "We need to present our findings to the Galactic Academic Consortium," Zektar said finally. "But I don't think they're going to like what we've discovered." The quantum communication system activated, connecting them to the prestigious conference halls of the consortium. Professors and researchers from dozens of worlds gathered to hear the first report from humanity's Deathworld. "Honored colleagues," Zektar began, his crystal structure resonating clearly across the galactic communication network. "We must report that our initial assumptions about Earth and humanity were incorrect." Professor Veltar's image flickered in the hologram. "Please elaborate. What corrections need to be made to human classification?" "Earth is not simply a Class 12 death world," 917 clicked. "It is a planetary-scale survival training facility. Every environmental challenge, every danger, every threat has been systematically incorporated into human evolution and culture." "That's impossible," responded Professor Catherine from the Valen Academy. "No species can adapt to unlimited environmental variation." "Humans have not adapted to unlimited variation," Aquilin explained. "They have adapted to adapt. Their primary survival trait is the ability to develop new survival traits in real time." The alien students began presenting their evidence. Videos of humans performing impossible physical feats, documentation of their distributed knowledge systems, analysis of their social cooperation patterns, examples of their disaster response capabilities. "Observe this human capability they call throwing," Zektar demonstrated with footage of human athletes. "They can launch projectiles with lethal accuracy across distances that exceed the effective range of most galactic personal weapons. This ability evolved from hunting on their death world. Note their endurance capabilities," Aquilin added. "Humans can maintain pursuit of prey for days without stopping. They are persistence predators who literally run their victims to death over vast distances. Their social bonding extends beyond genetic relationships." 907 continued. "They will risk death for complete strangers, fight to protect beings from other species, and sacrifice individual advantage for group survival. They have weaponized altruism." The alien professors listening to the presentation began to understand the implications. Comments and questions flooded the communication channel. "Are you suggesting humans are naturally aggressive?" asked Professor Mordith from the Chitek Collective. "Not aggressive," Luxara corrected. "Protective. They are genetically programmed to identify threats and eliminate them to protect their group. But they define their group as anyone they consider worth protecting." "How large is their group identification?" Professor Veltar asked nervously. "Unknown. They appear capable of extending protective instincts to their entire species, other species, and even abstract concepts like justice or freedom." Root Whisper presented the most disturbing evidence. "Their entire educational system is designed to mass-produce survival specialists. Every human receives training in basic medical care, emergency response, resource management, and cooperative problem-solving. Their entire population consists of educated survival experts. Furthermore," Mistwalker added, "they actively seek out new challenges. When their environment becomes too predictable, they deliberately expose themselves to greater dangers. They climb mountains, explore hostile territories, and push the boundaries of their survival capabilities for recreation." The silence that followed this presentation was profound. Finally, Professor Veltar spoke the question everyone was thinking. "What are the implications for galactic security?" Zektar's crystal structure resonated with harmonic frequencies that conveyed deep concern. "Humans are not just from a death world. They are the death world, in biological form. Every human is a mobile survival system that has internalized millions of years of planetary-scale hostility. They consider extreme conditions to be normal." 997 continued. "Danger motivates them rather than deterring them. Challenge makes them stronger rather than weaker. And they're starting to leave their planet." Aquilin concluded. The implications hit the galactic community like a shockwave. If humans could treat a Class 12 Deathworld as home, what would they be capable of in the supposedly safer environments of galactic space? We need to reconsider humanity's classification, Professor Veltar said finally. They're not just another sapient species from a dangerous world. They're something we've never encountered before. What do you recommend? Asked Professor Catherine. The alien students looked at each other through their protective equipment. They had lived among humans for months. They had seen their kindness, their intelligence, their willingness to help others, but they had also seen their incredible capacity for survival and their terrifying effectiveness when threatened. Friendship, Luxara said finally. The humans have a saying, it's better to have them as friends than enemies. After what we've observed, I recommend we ensure they consider us friends. And if they don't? Professor Mordeth asked. IX-7's mandibles clicked nervously. Then we pray to whatever deities we believe in, that they never decide we're a threat to something they want to protect. The communication ended with a promise to continue analyzing the data. But the alien students knew that their findings would change everything. The galaxy had discovered that Earth's Deathworld classification was incomplete. Earth hadn't just produced survivors. It had produced the ultimate apex species. Beings who turned every challenge into strength, every threat into motivation, and every disaster into an opportunity to become more formidable. A month later, as the alien students prepared to return to their homeworlds, Dr. Chen met with them one final time. I hope your stay has been educational, she said with that characteristic human smile. Dr. Chen, Sektar asked carefully, do humans understand what they are? She looked puzzled. What do you mean? Do you realize that your species represents the most advanced survival system ever evolved? That every human is essentially a biological weapon, optimized for surviving impossible conditions? Dr. Chen laughed. That sound that had once terrified them but now seemed merely unsettling. We're just people trying to get by and help each other out.